All right, so let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I'm really excited to be hosting the first Habits Builder Summit. And I want to share some of my slides with you. But more importantly, I think the selection of speakers that we have today are sort of have been carefully handpicked in order to bring some practical challenges that most of us face who are wanting to make and take those baby steps towards a healthy and a happier living. So, without further ado, let me first share my screen so that I'm able to kick this Habits Builder Summit off, where our theme is really to help you elevate your everyday by building healthy habits for lasting health and wellness. Now, acknowledging the traditional owners of this land and paying my respects to the elders emerging past and future, I wanted to share this image, which has been borrowed from a good friend of mine, an indigenous art, which is actually depicting that you are not alone. And I think it's got a powerful meaning, which is very pertinent to today. So I want to firstly bring in my co-host, Tash. Tash, as many of you may know, and some of you who may not know about her mission in life, is really health and well-being advocacy. And she shares her story of lived experience. And I think if there's one thing that I have realized being in the medical space, being a doctor, being a surgeon, it is one thing. It is stories that move us. And I'm sure you'd agree with me. So please allow me to welcome Tash. Tash, I'm going to get you to get off your camera, please, and unmute yourself. Now, Tash has sort of had a very interesting journey, but I think I'm going to get her to speak later on as well. But what is more important is that Tash and her brother Damo, and give a shout out to Damo as well, they have done an amazing job in starting Bariatric Support Group Australia. And many of you may be associated with that, and some of you may not be aware of it. But the key thing is that it is about stories that are coming from people who have a lived experience. And that's where the power of all of this comes in. So, Tash, I'm going to hand over to you if you're already. Tash, you there?
Yeah. Have you got
I think I've got a bit of an echo from you, but that's okay as long as you're able to hear us and we are able to hear you.
All right.
You there, Tash?
I sure am.
Beautiful. That's much better. Over
All
to you, Tash, to take us through some housekeeping.
right. Okay. And have you got me on video as well?
Yes, but I mean, it is just, we are all sharing the screen at the moment. That's what we can see.
Great. All right. So at the moment, we're just going to kick off with a little bit of housekeeping. So if everybody could please stay muted during our Habits Builder Summit, that would be so amazing. We would really appreciate that. And we would love it if you would send your questions in through the chat box. So you can access that just down the bottom of this webinar. And please stay right where you are until the end, because we have some freebies that we cannot wait to get into your hands after this wonderful Habits Builder Summit event is over. So make sure that you stick around.
Tash, just so you know, I can't seem to see your video. So if you can just start your video, that'll be awesome.
Go.
Beautiful. There you are.
Perfect.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. All right. So with that.
And now I'm really, really excited to be able to introduce the man that actually has brought all of this together for all of us. We are so very grateful to the wonderful Dr. Arun. I'm personally very, very thankful to him for everything that he does within this particular space, working within our community. Dr. Arun is a specialist in weight loss surgery and digestive health. He's a passionate, holistic wellness, mind, body, and heart type of a doctor. And that is the one thing that I was very impressed with from the very first time that I met him, is an understanding of the whole person. He runs a busy bariatric practice in Melbourne. He's an engaging speaker at scientific and public events. He's the author of 9 books with 35 scientific articles published. And he runs a popular YouTube channel with 15,000 subscribers. So let's all give a virtual clap for Dr. Arun.
Thank you. Thank you, Tash. All right. So, I guess the key thing that I just want to share with everybody who's here is, why did we put so much effort behind this event? And I think this is important, and I want to address this from a scientific perspective, and we've got some amazing speakers today who are going to be bringing the science to it, but we are also going to be hearing from individuals who deal with the emotional challenges that come with it. The way I look at building habits is really like, building with Lego blocks. And I think that's where we make it one piece at a time. We build a new structure, we build something beautiful, one brick at a time, one piece at a time. And I think with that background, the way I have seen it translate in the space of medicine is that every person writes their story of success or failure with their habits, and you could easily replace success with health and failure with disease. So it's really our habits. And the vision behind this webinar was to educate people, to empower them, and to enable them. Because I think enabling is the key piece, I believe, when you're actually able to translate that theory, that information into action. So with that, I want to actually take a little poll. So I'm going to have to probably stop sharing my screen just so that I'm able to do this poll. So kindly forgive me, but I have done this before. So I'm going to get in a poll question for everybody. And give me 1 second once I find the right button to click. This should show up on your screen in a moment. So please give me a second. Let me just log into the right screen, which I had logged in earlier. Just need to find that. All right, so here we are. And this is the first question that is coming in front of your screen, guys. And I want everybody to just look at the question. Can you just give me a thumbs up that everybody can see a question, or the panelists or anybody? Yes, awesome. Thank you. So the question is, which of these has the most influence on our habits? Have a think about it. Which of these has the most influence on our habits? Are we able to score? Can you give a score? Can you give? I can see that there are almost 44% people who are saying our family members and parents. 8% is blaming their partner or spouse, which is not what I expected. I expected there would be more people over there. And our environment, that's interesting. Okay, 67% are saying that the environment is something which is affecting their behavior. All right, well, okay, I'm going to stop the poll now, which is interesting. And look, there is no right or wrong answer. But what it is telling us is, where do we see the challenge lies? Now, please, everybody, I would request you to save your questions, put the questions in the chat box. We've got people who are monitoring these questions. And I'm going to go back to my slides one more time, because we've got the poll results, and it seems like everybody is agreeing on the fact that, it is our environment. So with that, I'm going to bring in the first speaker, Dr. Lucy Burns. Now, Dr. Lucy Burns is a medical doctor, but she and I connected in a way which was very interesting when we heard about each other through a common conference, a theme which was really around the holistic well-being of the individual, rather than just looking at one aspect, which is, as doctors, we are trained to just look at the disease part of it. And that's what really connected and got me interested in Dr. Lucy's work. She's the founder of Real Life Medicine and takes a very scientific and an integrative approach to health and well-being. She runs a busy practice and she also runs lots of online courses. So with that, I'm going to bring in Lucy, Dr. Lucy Burns. All right, Lucy, I'm going to get you to get off mute. And of course, you can turn your camera on as well. And there you are. Beautiful.
Hello.
Welcome, Lucy. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Arun, thank you so much for your lovely introduction. It was very kind. Thank you.
Pleasure. Over to you, Lucy. Take us away.
Okie dokie. So I thought this slide really, it just explains my background. I'm a medical doctor, as Arun said, and I have a fellowship in general practice, but more recently, well, now about 7 years ago, I now have a fellowship in lifestyle medicine. And that's really where my passion lies. And as part of that, like many people here, I help people improve their health and if they need to or want to lose weight. Now, the thing about these 50 million accreditations and qualifications is that at the end of the day, they're not actually what I think I'm best at. So I describe myself as an ex-chocoholic. I was a sweet tooth. I was one of those people that always ordered the pancakes with the maple syrup for breakfast if you went out to cafe, and I thought that people who ordered savory food were nuts. I used to joke that I would sell my children for a bag of Maltesers, half joking, and that my the footwell of my car was always covered in lolly wrappers. And if the truth be known, I really was a secret binge eater. I even had a business that sold chocolate bouquets, and honestly, I ate all of the profits. So for me, that lived experience is way more important than all of this hoo-ha. Arun, I'll get you to do the slide. So I used to manage my weight by this. I totally believed in dieting, calories in, calories out, just eat less, move more. And look, it would work for a little bit. And then ultimately I would cave and berate myself for being weak and then just go back to my life of chocolate and, put all the weight back on and wonder, why was I stuck on this roller coaster? And this was what we were taught originally. This is exactly what we were taught. When I went through medical school, which was last millennium, a lot of the things that I now know about weight management and about health didn't even exist. So I'll get you to move to the next slide, Arun. The things I now know about weight loss is that it's a complex conglomeration of different hormones. So we've got now metabolic hormones, which is what I'm going to focus on tonight. We know about sex hormones, so things like estrogen and menopause also affect weight. We know that stress, in particular cortisol, has a huge impact on people's weight management, and we know their thyroid health does as well. So the thing is, it is complicated. So the thing that grinds my gears, and I'm sure probably grinds yours, is when you see people on the internet just telling you to cut your calories. It is not that simple. If it was that simple, we'd all do that, because the majority of us are pretty smart and we know. But it doesn't work like that. It's actually this really complicated orchestra of hormones. So the one I'm going to focus on tonight is this baby, insulin. It is my favorite hormone. It is the king of metabolic health. So insulin is, the way I like to describe insulin, it's got a number of jobs, but it's really involved in our glucose and our fat storage. So what happens is that when we eat some food, our pancreas, little gland in our gut, makes insulin. And insulin's job is to move glucose into the cells for energy, because, we all want energy. And then whatever's left over, it moves it into the fat and stores it as fat. Now, if you can imagine, it's a bit like the human body is like a fireplace. So we've got a fireplace and we're trying to heat our house. And when you do this, you use a mixture of kindling and logs. So kindling is like our glucose and it burns quickly and dies down quickly. And logs are a bit like our fat stores and they do the slow burn. And ideally, we have both of these next to our fireplace. However, what's happening in today's society with the increasing concept of something called insulin resistance, which lots of you may know of, some of you may not know about it. The way I like to describe it is you don't have any logs next to your fireplace anymore. They're stored in a woodshed. And in this woodshed, you've got heaps of logs all stacked up. So these are our fat stores. I'll go to the next slide, Arun. What happens is that we should be opening the woodshed and getting into the fat stores. But for lots of us, it's got a padlock. So this padlock locks away your fat stores. This padlock is insulin. And for some people, they have about 6 or 7 padlocks. So they're really insulin resistant. And basically what that means is when they've finished eating, burning their glucose, their fireplace is empty and they've essentially run out of fuel. So what happens is they get tired, they get hungry, they get hangry, and they find themselves desperately needing to eat again and then thinking that they're just greedy or lazy and they don't know how to stop this cycle. Next slide. The thing that happens is you can see here, this is just a couple of my patients. And, these are just examples of how high our insulin can go. So you can see in the brackets are the normal responses. So this is somebody who's had a glucose drink, and then we measure their insulin levels at 0, 1, and 2 hours. We do this with a glucose tolerance test. Lots of you who have had babies may have had this before. And you can see that both of these people, like their fasting insulin is higher than normal. And the bottom graph or the bottom results, that was a patient of mine. And look how high his insulin levels are. They're in the 500s. His pancreas is working like the clappers. And basically, he's got about 20 locks on his shed. What this means is that his body stores fat like crazy, but he's also hungry all the time. And he gets stuck in this vicious cycle. Next slide. And people always go, but what do you mean? What's happening? And look, there's a lot. It's complicated, but this is a really straightforward graph that tells you insulin's responses to the type of foods that we eat. So when we eat carbohydrates, so that's sugar and starches, our body needs lots of insulin to metabolize those. When we eat protein, we use a little bit. And when we eat fat, just a tiny amount. And one of the major things that's happened in our diet over the last 50 years is how high we have increased our carbohydrates, both simple, what we call simple carbohydrates, and complex. And so our bodies are producing this insulin all the time and they're exhausted. The 3 things that you're going to learn about today is that for long-lasting health and weight loss, we really need to improve our metabolic health. So we really need to focus on improving that insulin levels and all of the other players that fall into that. We need to develop good mindset skills, and that's really around some habit building. And you need tools to make it easy to implement. Most people think that for long-lasting weight loss, they just need new recipes. That's not it. That's the shiny object. Yes, recipes are helpful, but they're one tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. You need the hormones in balance first. You need the mindset tools to be able to continually do it. And then you need easy things to make it, tools to make it easy to implement.
Beautiful. That was very succinct, Lucy. And I'm sorry I kind of moved around with the slides a little bit too
Oh, no, you were
quickly.
fine.
Uh,
You're fine.
I think there's a question that comes to mind, and by the way, to everybody who's attending, I just want to request you to put the questions in the Q&A. For some reason, our the chat function, we are just trying to enable that for attendees as well. And I've seen some questions come through already. But Lucy, there's one question that comes to mind. You showed the graph, and I'm asking this for the benefit of everyone, not as a doctor, that you showed the graph of carbohydrate. There's a sharp spike in insulin levels, and then you showed proteins and fat. Does this mean that protein and fat only should be the key parts or key ingredients of our diet? Is that what
No,
you are suggesting?
no, definitely not the only components. I think, and a lot of this depends on, I mean, health is extremely individual. We can give guidelines for the broad population, but for most people, there's some nuance to it. So the thing is that the type of foods that somebody with a normal insulin response is going to be completely different to, say, somebody like my man with his insulin of 500. So every time he eats carbohydrates, and particularly the very fast acting ones, the sugary ones, or, chips, those sorts of things, then he's going to have a massive insulin response compared to somebody who's what we call metabolically flexible. So maybe a younger person who's doing lots of exercise, they're going to have a much smaller insulin
Correct.
response.
Which brings me to a question which has been asked is that, how can I tell that, how can an individual tell that they have insulin resistance? Is this something that we can pick up, or, do you need to do a test for that?
Yeah, so there's three things that will give you a very strong clue. So this is if you store most of your body fat around the middle. So if you're in the olden days, we used to call it the apple and the pear. If you're the apple, then you are more likely to be insulin resistant than if you're a pear. Women don't like having fat stores on their bottom and legs, but it's much safer for us health-wise.
We men often say that women are genetically blessed.
Yes.
So, and I think men are kind of a bit weak on that front because we stack everything in the middle.
Indeed. And unfortunately, when women go through menopause, they are much more likely to behave like men and start storing their fat around the middle as well.
Right.
So we know that storing fat around the middle is one clue. The second clue is skin tags. So if you have lots of skin tags, not just a couple, but lots around your neck, under your armpits, in your groin, then that's a sign of insulin resistance. And the third thing that some people get is like pigmentation of their skin. So particularly armpits around their neck, this sort of darkening velvety skin can also be a clue. We can also just look at history. So if you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, one or two parents, if you're a woman and you had gestational diabetes, or you've had polycystic ovarian syndrome, or you've been diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you're going to be insulin resistant. And then if you've moved into type 2 diabetes, then you already are.
Yeah. And essentially the message is for at least all the men out there is that check your abdominal circumference, abdominal girth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And even for women as well, it applies. And I believe there is also more defined ratios like waist and hip ratio. And if your waist is bigger, clearly you are at a higher risk. And that's also called visceral fat, isn't it?
Totally. Yes. Yes.
Lovely, lovely. Lucy, thank you so much. I'd request you to please stay on, and any further questions for Lucy, please put it in the Q&A section. You can find it just by clicking the three dots on the side of your screen. You will come up with the Q&A section, or just try the chat function as well. Now,
Absolutely. And I would just add in that part of the reason our gift at the end that Real Life Medicine is gifting attendees, part of the reason we chose this particular program is because it is super helpful for insulin resistance.
Absolutely. And that is so appropriate, when you shared that with me. And I think, everybody who's going to sort of get that gift is going to love it because it's so much related to what you've just spoken about. So thank you so much, Lucy.
You're welcome.
It was a delight hearing you, but please stay on because we would have more questions for you. All right, Tash, I'm going to hand it over to my lovely co-host now.
Thank you so much, Arun. Actually, we do have another question for
Oh, yeah, sure.
How do you find out what hormones are driving your fat retention?
I'll go back first, and this is a question for Lucy.
Yes. So the
Particularly
bottom line,
women who are around the age of menopause with
yeah.
mothers. So
Insulin is the king hormone that is the biggest driver of fat storage. But we then have other hormones that will increase that insulin effect. So for women, estrogen is protective. Estrogen is the world's best hormone for women, and it will protects you against insulin resistance, obviously, until menopause. And then it starts to dwindle. And so women who weren't insulin resistant can become insulin resistant. So that's one hormone. The other one is cortisol, chronically elevated stress. So chronic stress, not just, oh, I've had a bad day and now I'm okay, but that chronic busy life that we all lead also increases insulin resistance, as do lots of our lifestyle factors. But they're the two hormones that I love talking about. Well, the three, really.
yeah. Thank you so much for answering that, Dr. Lucy. Really appreciate that. We are now going to have Aidan join us.
Beautiful. But before you do that, sorry, Tash, we've got a poll.
Oh, we do.
Yes, we've got one more poll. In fact, yeah, we've got some Q&A. So let me just bring the poll for Aidan, because that is going to allow us to get a feel of what the audience is feeling about this. So can everybody see this question? If you can just give me a little thumbs up. Beautiful. That's great. What's my number one challenge with incorporating exercise into your weight loss journey? Weight loss is a big issue for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I know for me, I can probably answer that I had nearly all of those.
Yeah, but let's see what the audience is saying about what is the top ranker. Number one is I don't have time. 42% are saying I don't have time. 8% are saying I don't like going to the gym. Well, that's quite genuine. I think, sometimes we just don't want to go and hang around with smelly, sweaty people. With all due respect, I know we are all trying to work out in the gym. I like exercise, but can't be consistent. 47%, actually, that's taken over now because time is not so much of an issue. It's 47% are saying, I like exercise, but can't be consistent. And the 12% are saying, I can exercise, but struggle with hunger. So yeah, this is the same topic that Lucy was talking about. All right. Now, actually, consistency has come to 53% now. So, which is quite impressive. So I think we need to get an expert, Tash, to be able to educate us about this question.
We definitely do need our expert. So, Aidan, if you could join us, that would be wonderful. Aidan is passionate about learning. Aidan is, he loves to communicate and likes teaching in all areas related to exercise and health. Aidan strongly believes in a client-centered approach, empowering individuals with the tools that they need to take control of their own health. He is a clinical exercise physiologist. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Aidan.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tash, and thank you, Arun. Looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, cannot wait.
Beautiful. All right, Aidan, these are your slides, and just tell me when to move next. That's it.
Great, fantastic. So we're looking at exercise and how we can get started with it. And we're going to try and tackle some of these main issues that came up in the poll, which is not really having time for exercise or finding it challenging to have the consistency in our schedule to exercise. We'll chuck on to the next slide now when we're ready. So we have these national Australian exercise guidelines, and these come into two categories. We've got aerobic exercise, which we can see as our huffing and puffing exercise. That's for our heart and our lungs. So the recommended amount is between about 150 to 300 minutes of what we call moderate intensity. So it's kind of like you're walking, you can feel your heart beating, but you can still hold a conversation. And then we have either that or 75 to 125 minutes of what we call vigorous intensity. It's probably where we're working at intensity where it's getting a bit hard to hold a conversation. It's more just words that we can get out. We also have what we call resistance training, and this is where we're using our muscles and our bones against some sort of resistance. So this could be like holding a weight, a dumbbell, or it could just be our own body weight that we're using as the resistance. Now, if you don't meet these guidelines, you're not alone. If we look at the population in Australia across the board, people have trouble meeting this. So if we look at adolescents, so these are kids from the age of 17 down to even 15, about 83% of these kids aren't meeting those guidelines, and around 80% aren't getting enough of that resistance training in. If we look at adults, 37% aren't getting enough of those the guidelines in, and about 73% aren't getting enough resistance training in. This tends to get worse as we age. So we look at older adults, so 65 and above, up to 57% aren't getting enough of that aerobic activity in, and as high as 84% aren't getting enough resistance training in as well. So it's really common across all of Australia that we're not really meeting these guidelines. Now, this could be for a few things. It can be a few common barriers, and sometimes there are some myths that get in the way that might stop people from exercising, or might kind of sway people into getting the wrong idea about what exercise is actually doing. So the biggest one that I kind of feel like I come across people is you see all these kind of fancy exercise programs and you're wondering like, gee whiz, so many things that I need to like nail and it seems so complicated. I got to get this right. Otherwise, maybe it's too complicated and I'll just back away from it. So this all or nothing approach, or the feeling like we need to have the perfect exercise plan. Now, the thing is, something's going to be better than nothing. Even if we're just exercising a little bit, that's going to be so much better than if we have the perfect exercise plan but barely do it. So a little bit often is a lot better than a lot a little. So we want to just be trying to push for doing a little bit and then trying to do that consistently. The next thing is exercise can be a great tool for weight loss, but kind of like what Dr. Lucy Burns was talking about, it's just kind of like one of those padlocks. And if you're seeing that as like your silver bullet to weight loss, you might be a bit disappointed and you might find like you're working really, really hard and not really getting the progress you want from it. And that can be a bit disheartening. So exercise can be a great tool to aid in the weight loss, but it's probably not the thing that's going to solve it by itself. It's something that's going to have to take consideration with what you're doing with your diet, what your hormones, what your stress levels, what your environment is. Another thing, this is really unfortunate, spot reduction, it's not really a thing. If we're holding fat and we're an apple and we want to lose that fat around our abdomen, unfortunately, we can't do specific exercises to get rid of that specific fat. I wish that were the case. We can exercise certain areas to improve that muscle mass, but fat seems to be more of a systemic and global problem. So it's more about losing the whole weight across our body rather than just trying to target one area. I hope there's evidence to come out in the future that changes, but for now, it's more just we're having to lose the whole fat across the body as opposed to just being able to target a certain area. The last one of our myths is needing to exercise in this kind of fat burning zone. Now, there are certain maybe cardiovascular zones where we might burn a little bit more fat than otherwise. But the general principle is if we're just doing a bit of movement and we're doing that more often, that's going to be our key here rather than kind of focusing on the exact optimal exercise that we want to try and hit. We'll jump on to the next slide. So another big misconception I can get is that I'm a bit older now, maybe it's too late for me to exercise. I'm kind of passing these benefits. If we have a look on the left-hand side, we've got some sections of MRI recordings. I find this really cool because with the first one, we've got this really fit young 40-year-old triathlete. And if you look at the kind of darker matter there, that's like his muscle mass. So a lot of muscle mass around his thighs we're seeing. If we look at the next one down, we've got this 74-year-old sedentary man. We can see the muscle mass is a lot less and there's a lot more adipose tissue or fat tissue around that. So it looks like this person's got a lot less muscle, a lot more fat. But if we look at the person underneath that, we've got the person the same age. And if you look at the first image again, they're almost identical. So you've got someone who's 74, who is also a triathlete, and he's pretty much got the exact same muscle mass as that 40-year-old. Now, I think this line here has kind of gone down a little bit, but usually what will happen is as we age, there will be maybe a slight little decline of muscle mass and bone mass if we don't do anything. when we're younger, we've got the privilege of you can sit on the couch and you're just going to be putting on more muscle mass just by sitting there. It's pretty cool. As we age, especially as our hormones start to become a bit more imbalanced, especially with women going through menopause, you might notice a drop off in these muscle mass, and it's a bit harder to maintain what we've got. That being said, we still have tremendous potential to change that trajectory. So we could potentially be on the path to, losing that muscle mass as we age. But if we start doing a little bit now, we can either make it so, 10, 20 years from now, we're still able to walk independently, or maybe even do more than that, be able to go up flights of stairs, pick up our grandchildren. We've got a lot of control in the here and now to kind of shape what our future is going to look like by just doing a little bit consistently. We'll go on to the next slide. So the most common barriers I usually see when I'm talking with clients is this not enough time or not enough energy. We'll get into what those look like. So a good exercise I like doing with my clients, and this is something you could potentially do now or take a little screenshot and come back to you later, is a resource allocation matrix. I really like this one because it gets you to figure out what are we actually putting our time into. Imagine you've got 10 points and you can spread this across 4 different kind of windows or boxes. We've got our work, which could be your job. It could be your family. It could be things that is like life admin, like a dentist appointment. The next thing we've got is relationships. So it could be with your loved one, your family members, your kids, your friends. We've got recovery. This doesn't have to just be stretching and yoga. It could be things like watching your favorite Netflix show or going for a walk on the beach with your loved one, something that's recharging your batteries. And next, we've got this thing, which is physical activity. And notice that's not even exercise. It's just movement. Now, I want you to kind of work out where you're spending those points at the moment. So I've got a total of 10 points. They're the only points we can spend. And you can't break into like a half number. It has to be a whole one. Work out where you're kind of spending your time at the moment. The next thing is to work out, what do you actually want to spend your time on? Some people might find when I do this that work might be a 7 or an 8 out of 10. And I'll ask them, is that what you want that number to be? And often that's not the case. It might be a bit lower. Maybe it's like a 4 or a 3. What we are trying to do here is we're trying to allocate what our priorities are, what we want to prioritize, and then maybe what kind of leeway we may have to putting into this physical activity bucket. We'll go on to the next slide when we're ready. So if we look at it throughout the week, we've got 168 hours. And according to the guidelines, we're trying to exercise for 2.5 hours. So that's like in comparison of what we're looking at. It's not a lot of time in our week. We're busy though. So we work for usually 8 hours a day. Everyone's probably doing a bit more than that. We're also sleeping for 8 hours a day, hopefully as well. So if we take those hours out, there's still 56 hours where we're hopefully not sleeping, not working, that we still might have up our sleeve to potentially do some sort of exercise. And then there's all these boxes that come into it. So, okay, well, we want to have time for recovery. We want to have time for relationships. All we're asking is to carve out a little bit of time for a bit more exercise, and we still have plenty of time for all the other things as well. We'll jump on to the next slide when we're ready. So another one too is seeing our exercise almost like an investment. This comes into the barrier of not enough energy. Working out, it's tough. I feel tired afterwards. I've got all these other things I want to do. Why do I want to exercise? You can kind of almost see like exercise putting like money into an investment bank, because by doing that, we get more energy we can spend later. When we're working out, we're essentially making our body adapt, so it's more efficient at doing that job for the future. But it's also more efficient at doing other things, such as like walking, carrying bags of groceries without being short of breath, getting through your day, being less exhausted. These are all things that can kind of make us feel like we've got more energy to do the things we want to do. So rather than having 10 points now, you might have 12. So you can spend it more with your family and more on recovery, more watching those Netflix shows. We'll jump on to the next one. So a good little check-in time is to work out, where do we feel like we're sitting at the moment? How motivated are we to perhaps exercise? Hopefully that number's come up a little bit since the start of this seminar. From a scale from 1 to 10, how important is it that we're trying to achieve the goal we're working towards? The next thing is, do we actually have the tools or the confidence we need to make that change? So from 0 to 10, how confident are we that we can actually make that change? And what this lets me do is clarify, is it more the motivation that's lacking, or is it more the confidence? And oftentimes the motivation's really there, but the confidence is lacking. We'll go on to the next part now. So how do we make exercise a habit and something we can do consistently? So there's almost like two parts to us. There's the thinking fast, reactive part, and the thinking slow, routine part. We can kind of think about our habits as our kind of brain on energy saving mode. Oftentimes we've got lots of things we need to focus on, and it can be tough trying to process everything. So the brain has all these little shortcuts we can do. We can kind of almost see our habits as like walking on this clearly defined path where it doesn't take a lot of energy. Then we have routines, which is our deliberate, thoughtful action. So it'd be like, okay, I'm trying to do this exercise program. Aiden said exercising was good. I'm going to try and go for a walk. When we're starting out, that can be really tough and it takes a lot of cognitive energy. It's almost like the path is really overgrown. You almost need to get out the lawnmower or even a machete and kind of cut your way through it. And it can take a bit of effort. So when we start an exercise program, we want to consolidate a routine, but we also want to try and make as much leeway into making that routine a habit as quickly as possible. So it doesn't take so much energy to kind of keep doing it. We'll jump onto the next slide when we're ready. So how can we do this with exercise? One thing I really like, there's an awesome book that I'd recommend people reading if they haven't already, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in this, he's got these laws of behavior change that I really like. So I kind of flesh those out for what that might look like for starting exercise. So the four things are making it obvious, making it attractive, making it easy, and making it satisfying. Let's go through a bit of an example. So to make it obvious could be, okay, I want to exercise, I want to do it consistently. Maybe I'm just going to schedule some time in my calendar on my phone. So it's going to prompt me to exercise so I remember that. Or maybe I want to go for, a walk or a run in the morning. Maybe I'll leave my shoes at the end of my bedroom so I can't miss it. I'm not going to forget about it. The next thing is I want to make it attractive. How can I make this something that I actually want to do? Maybe I could message a friend and go for a walk with them in the morning. It makes it more attractive, but it also makes it more attractive. It makes it less attractive to not do it. So if I'm kind of sleeping in and it's like a rainy day and it's 7 a.m. and I meet my friend in the park, if I know I'm meeting my friend, I'm more likely to get there and it's less of an incentive to stay in bed because I don't want to be in their bad books. Next thing is I want to make it easy. So this could be things like having all the exercise gear ready to go. And the last thing is making it satisfying. So that could be like, okay, at the end of the walk or the exercise, I'm just going to grab a coffee. I'm going to feel good about it. That's pretty much the presentation done there. We can jump into the poll now.
Thank you, Aiden. Yeah, that was really nice. I was a bit disappointed to hear about spot reduction. Well, there is an answer for that, which is liposuction, but it's not, there's no need to go to the gym for that. And in full disclaimer, I don't do it. So, but there are people who do it, of course, So, no, that was nice. But Aiden, I think I have one point which I 100% agree with you, and I've seen it personally in so many instances in my own life, not just exercise, is having an accountability buddy. I feel that makes so much of a difference. Tash, I'd welcome your input as well. And of course, our audience's input as well about what do they feel about when they want to start a habit, just having a friend or somebody who they can just partner with. Tash, I'd welcome your input.
100%. For me, it was definitely my children and my dogs needed walking. And I know that might sound really, really strange, but I knew that they needed that. So that actually motivated me to start walking after I had my bariatric procedure. And at the start, I could not go far. I'm talking maybe 150 meters. That was it. But and then the kids would take the dogs off and they would do the walk. But my desire was to be able to go with them. And it motivated me 100%. And in the time since, I've started walking with friends. I now run and all of those things, but 100% the accountability buddy thing is amazing.
And for those of us who don't have kids or anybody who hasn't got, a dog is a good accountability buddy, right? Beautiful. All right. Well, let's see if there are any questions for Aiden. Tash, do you mind looking at or?
There is a question that's been asked, and someone has asked, does sleep fall under recovery? What is the right balance to hit between sleep and exercise?
Yes. So if we think about it, when we exercise, we're not really building our body, we're breaking it down and we're giving it a stimulus to kind of grow back stronger. And sleep is that period where it happens. So sleep is super important. When we talk about sleep, though, there's sleep quality and quantity. So ideally, we're kind of getting enough sleep around that 8 hours, but we want that to be good quality sleep as well. Exercise is one of those things that can be kind of a positive spiral or a negative spiral. If we don't exercise, then we might have more issues sleeping, and then we have less energy, and then we're less likely to exercise. And when we start exercising, we're probably finding that we're getting better sleep, we have more energy, we want to exercise more. So they really closely link together, I find.
Just on sleep and exercise, Aiden, can I just ask a question? And this is something that gets thrown around often. If you exercise late in the evening, because exercise stimulates your stress hormones as well, it's good stress. Does that impact sleep as well, an individual's sleep, if they're exercising late in the evening, say 6, 7, thereabouts?
Yes. Quick answer, it depends. So if we're exercising and we're really getting that heart rate up and that stress response is high, it can potentially have an impact. However, there are lots of things you can do to mitigate that. One thing when we exercise, our kind of fight or flight or our sympathetic nervous system gets ramped up. You can do things to bring it down though. So that might be doing a bit of a cool down. We might do some parasympathetic breathing, some kind of slow stretches. That's a great way to bring your heart rate, those cortisol and the stress hormones right down, get you into that receptive state for sleeping.
Is having beer a part of cool down process?
Probably not.
Sorry, that's a dumb question, but like, I mean, after you sweat it out, a lot of men think, all right, I've given myself the permission to have a couple of stubbies, that's
Yeah,
okay.
might get the happy hormones up, but I don't think it's going to help the sleep.
Good one. I agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Well, look, we are wanting to keep on time because everybody who's here, they're spending this precious time with us, and we want to bring value from our rest of our speakers. Of course, you have heard some really good, exciting topics being touched upon. So, Tash, if I have your permission, I'm going to show another poll. Let's chat with the audience and see what they have to say about this next question, which we are going to be talking about. And then we will have a bit of a question from the audience about what they think they are going to be sharing with us about this. All right. So can everybody see this question? Yes. Okay. All right. The question is, what meal prep do you think makes healthy eating easiest? All right. Let us see what people have to say. All right. Let's just sort of go. And so we've got over here pre-chopping ingredients for quick meals is 18%. The top of the pack is planning meals weekly to stay on track, 44%. Stocking healthy snacks and foods in the freezer, 37%. Making food from scratch, oh my God, 0%. Gee, nobody believes in making food from scratch in order to get healthy eating habits in place. All right. Well, looks like everybody is, or at least the majority is voting for planning meals weekly to stay on track. All right. I'm going to stop that poll over there. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to now bring in our next speaker, who is going to be giving some expert opinion on the nutrition piece. All right. Well, I hope everybody is able to see my screen. There you go. All right. So we have, we were meant to have Kate. Kate is the founder of BeFit Foods, but for a good reason, I try not to use the word unfortunately because Kate is not able to be with us. It's slightly unfortunate for us, but Kate is actually committed to her daughter's school play where her daughter is performing. So it's a good, happy reason. We are missing her, but we are also happy for Kate that she is able to attend to her mom duties. But who we have with us is another really amazing dietitian who is very passionate about integrative nutrition. And that's Julia. So I want to welcome Julia over here. Thank you, Julia, for stepping in at a short notice. I'd like you to please unmute yourself and also turn the camera on if you're there. And I'll just read very briefly. Julia has a deep-rooted passion for holistic health. She is dedicated to providing personalized nutritional advice and also a patient-centered care such that people feel empowered. both in their physical and mental well-being. She also supports patients in different and diverse needs with chronic health conditions. So, without further ado, let me bring Julia. Julia, are you there? I'm not able to hear Julia. Oh, there you are. There you are. Welcome, Julia. Thank you so much. Please take us away.
Thank you very much for wonderful introduction. And I think I will build on from what Lucy kindly mentioned. We will talk about a tool that we can use, few tools actually, that we can use in our toolbox in trying to make our life a little bit easier. And of course, trying to curb there's some success in our weight loss. Next slide, please. So what can we do? And of course, what our Paul said, we can plan our meals in advance. So please dedicate your time. I usually do it on Sundays where I'm free more or less, and I pre-plan what we're going to have during the week. We all have different tastes at our house. So I'm trying to plan so that is suitable for me and my husband and for my children. You can use different plans, or you can even print different templates to structure your weekly plan. And of course, try to focus on low carb meals where possible, just to have that insulin. Again, I'm coming back to what Lucy said, under control. Try to add lean proteins, for example, your chicken, we can use fatty fish, some tofu, and some healthy fats. And they include things like avocado, mixed nuts and seeds, and some really good cold-pressed vegetable oils. Use different mix of meals, batch cook different dishes, and make sure that I will talk a little bit more about the labels, but when you cook a big batch of soup or big batch of casserole or big batch of stir fry, it's something that can be kept in the fridge or frozen for later on. And of course, all of these low carb meals, they will stabilize your food sugar, your blood glucose levels or your blood sugars. Next, please. When you're going to the shop, my first recommendation, never go on the empty stomach, because we tend to buy things that we don't really need. So make sure that you write dedicated shopping list that is consistent with your meal plan. Stick to your list and try to avoid compulsive buying. Prioritize low carb staples, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower. Again, going back to lean proteins, eggs, nuts, seeds, and so on. Check your pantry and the fridge to make sure you don't overbuy, and then the food costs arm and a leg now. So try to avoid that food wastage as well. And keeping it simple and clear will save you time and will reduce your stress levels. Next, please. Slide, please. Okay, I already kind of touch on batch cooking. So prepare large versatile staples. Grill your chicken, and that can be easily frozen. Or you can cook some ground beef, like Mexican style, for example. Roast your vegetables, or again, pre-make sauces and freeze them as well. Proportion them in the containers. Make sure you label them and you date them, so you know what it is in the containers that goes into your freezer, because sometimes we freeze the food, we're getting it out, and we have no idea what it is in those containers. You can also portion the foods and, for example, label it Monday lunch or Tuesday dinner. And like that, you will have your foods under control, and you will not be reaching for foods when you're coming back from work and you're tired and you just want something. And when we don't have those foods ready, what we do, we open the pantry, we open the fridge, and we're just going for our life, just grabbing whatever it is in front of our eyes. Again, use the portion control. Try to eat from the smaller plates, because visually it looks smaller. and it doesn't increase your appetite. And when you will finish, most likely you will feel fuller after eating that small plate than you will be trying to fit more from the bigger plate. Proportioning ensures that you stay within your calories, and that will promote the weight loss. Next slide, please. Again, going back to prep your ingredients ahead of time. When you buy your vegetables, wash them, dry them, pre-chop them, and have them already sliced. Things like zucchini, cucumbers, carrots, capsicums, little cherry tomatoes, as you can see on the photos. You can marinate your food. So when you come home, again, you just chuck them on the barbecue, and you have a little salad that has been made, and marinated foods, and you have a beautiful dinner done. Increase your creativity by using different herbs and spices. So it just gives that a bit of a kick into your food. Next slide, please. And little healthy snacks ready. That can be your high protein yogurts, some boiled eggs, some veggie sticks and dips like hummus, crackers and cheese, nuts, berries. Store them in accessible spots. And again, you can always pre-portion them so they are easily accessible and you can grab them on the go. Next slide, please.
Beautiful. We will come to this one at the end. I will talk about this in a moment. So before we go to the next poll, I want to just ask a question, and I'll also mention a question that has been asked in the Q&A, is that, Julia, what is your view about the microwaved packets, that you can put food, ready to cook food in microwave ovens? Any thoughts about it?
Depends what sort of food. Some of it has a lot of preservatives, but if it's like plain rice or mixed like rice and quinoa, whole grains, just for the convenience of it, it's amazing staple to have in your pantry. But you can also pre-cook a batch of the rice or quinoa and sort it out in the containers and keep it in the freezer, and then stuck it in the microwave, deal done.
Beautiful. All right. So that's good. I think, yeah, there seems to be some sort of controversy around microwaving foods in plastic ready-made containers, but that's okay. I think there will be some controversies around these things. Now, I have a question which has been asked in the Q&A chat box, which I'd request Lucy also, if she's there, and Julia, yourself too, either one of you, if you could kindly take this, is, do anti-inflammatory foods actually help in arthritis? That is the question that is being asked. So maybe I might ask Lucy, medical view, any thoughts around it? And are there any anti-inflammatory foods that you know of? And then we'll get Julia to